All right, good morning. Two things. First, and I'm not going to lie to you, I asked Shannon to send this email out again. I don't know if anyone in here is guilty of it, but it's unbelievable how bad a bathroom can look in the morning. I came in here the other morning and there were literally 20 pieces of paper towel on the floor in the men's bathroom right outside the door here. And there was some really disgusting paper toweling that was sitting, right next to the sink. So I'm not saying that's any of you, but if it is, pretend you're at home and be nice like you would be at home. All right? And I guess if that sounds like a sexist thing, all I can say is I've never heard about a problem in the women's bathroom. All right. You all got an email from me today. What I did was I tried to lay out a schedule because a lot of you like to see this literally through the end of the month. So we're going to go over that first so you know what's going on, and then we're going to go on from there. So this is it. I've got it up here in Notepad++. Today, as it says, we're going to first go over the schedule. Then I've got your tests, but I'm going to first write the test for you for both problems, and I'm going to hand them back to you after that. Then we're going to lecture on Chapter 3, followed by the test review of Chapter 3. I've given you the shell for the next version of the calculator in that same email. And if there's time, there probably won't, but if there is, we'll start on an array program, which we'll complete on Monday. And then I showed you this yesterday. We're going to look at a little bit of a very small little website design project that we'll look at over 2 periods. We'll do that for about an hour, hour and a half, and then lab. Tuesday of next week, you're going to have the written test for Chapter 3, followed by the rest of that responsive website little thingy, and then lab. Wednesday, lecture for Chapter 4, test review for Chapter 4, and lab. Thursday, debugging exercise. If you don't know what debugging is, you'll know by the time we get done with Chapter 4 and lab. Remember, a week from today, there is no class because it's Veterans Day. I'm not going to go through the rest of it, all right? But just so you have an idea of what's going on, I'm going to do the best I can to adhere to this schedule, not what's in the syllabus. But as it says, it's always subject to change. Something happens if I come in someday and the majority of you are gone, or if I get sick or something, it doesn't normally happen, but this is what I plan on sticking to because people ask that question. All right? So you can look at that. I'm not asking, but you can look at it. If you've got any questions after you look at it, let me know. All right. The tests. Okay. What I'm going to do is literally I'm going to grab all of the comments from the first problem right now. That's what I'm doing here. So these are all the comments from the first problem. All right. Pretty it up just a bit so we can all read it, including me. Some of you had problems with this test. Some of you might be a little bit disappointed because if you're used to getting A's on the test, you may not have gotten an A on this test. I'm not going to say whom, but there were 2 people in the class who got A's. That was it. Normally we have more than that, but that's just the way it worked out. So, and I'm not trying to waste my time or your time doing what I'm doing right now, but I do want to go over and show you. So if you get it back and you go, why'd you grade it like this? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? I'm going to try to explain that as we go through here. Oops. Now the first thing, and in all seriousness, when I say this, I'm not trying to be funny because I don't think this is funny. But you were asked to save these files with specific names. JS hot, for hands-on test 1a.html, JS hot 1a.js for the JavaScript file. If you saved it, but you didn't save it as that, you got half a point. All right, because part of it was just following instructions. Okay? All right, the big thing that hit people, separate functions. Most of you did this thing as just one big function. That's not what you were asked to do. All right? And I'm not picking on anybody in particular. There were a couple of you in here that did it perfectly. What I couldn't understand, maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm just a little bit timid. I don't understand this. What some of you did was you did the second one perfectly, but then you didn't do it for the first one, which I didn't understand. You followed the instructions almost to the letter for the second one, and you didn't for the first one. All right? What we're going to do today is we're going to look at this the way that I wrote it, and I don't have any notes. I have nothing here. That's for the calculator. All right? But I'm going to write it from scratch, so it probably won't be exactly the same way that I wrote it when I did the key, which is fine. All right? If you've got questions as we're going through this, please stop and ask me. All right? So I'm going to create a folder on my desktop that I'm going to call JS HOTs. And I'm going to call this, what was it supposed to be again? JS HOT 1A, thank you. 1A.html. All right. Come back and change this so we've got HTML comments, so that doesn't look so funky. All right, so taking it from the top. So I'm going to write a different function for each one of these things in here. But, you know, at a minimum, and most of you did a real good job on what I'm about to tell you next. I'll make this a little bigger. Var height, and set it equal to 0, that's fine. Person's height. And this will actually, I'm going to throw this into a JavaScript file in just a minute, but I'm just going to put it like this so you can see it while I'm doing it. So that's the person's height. Var weight. And that's the person's weight. All right. And var BMI. And I set that equal to 0.0. Another thing that was on there. Part of this exercise was seeing whether or not you could read and follow instructions. If you didn't set it up to 2 decimal places, your answer, you lost points. You were supposed to do that. And we did go through it. We've looked at it with a calculator already. That's why I said if you have any doubts about anything, go back and take a look at open up the calculator program and use that. A couple of you did. You used that as a template, and your grade is reflected in that. And it wasn't because the calculator program was that great. I'm concerned right now with you working and understanding programming. All right? Not even the correlation so much to JavaScript. Okay? But just in HTML, just programming. We're going to eventually later go back and rewrite the calculator program. I don't know if we'll do this one or not, but we'll write the calculator program, and we'll do it using the get element by ID and all the other good stuff. All right? But we're not doing that yet. All right, so this is the person's body mass index. Now, again, there are plenty of ways that what I'm about to show you could be written. I'm going to show you one of the ways. Definitely not the only way, but one of the ways. So I'm going to have here this function that's going to be called main. And again, main means absolutely nothing to JavaScript. But many programming languages require that you have a main. That's why I'm using it. All right? So I'm going to say in here, height equal get height. Weight equal get weight. And I haven't written these yet. And BMI equal calculate BMI. And then we'll just call display values. That's fine. Now, I'm asking this because, again, I don't know. Does everybody understand these 3 routines that are right here in gray? Does everybody understand that since you are setting something equal to them, that means that those routines must return a value? Does that make sense to everyone? They must. All right? This one will not return a value. Does that make sense? Because we're not assigning it to anything. Okay? Just so you know, it is legal to return a value from a routine and then not do anything with the value. So in other words, I could have done this. I could have just called get height here, and I could have even done a return. And I wouldn't have gotten any error, but I wouldn't have been able to do anything with the value. Wouldn't have made much sense to do that, but I could have done that if I wanted to. All right? All right. So the first function that's in here is get height. And I'm just going to make a local variable in here, var h for height. And eventually I'm going to return h. Now that's not all of it. There's a lot more to this. But I'm going to say this is equal to equal to parse int prompt enter height please. And I'm just going to default the height to 6 feet. All right. Now, you all know this. It is totally plausible that when we do this, somebody leaves it blank, puts in something non-numeric or whatever. This is where I expect you to do the is NaN. So I say here if is not a number, height. All right, so in other words, I put something in there that's non-numeric. I just wanted, you could put in alert, some of you did, you didn't have to do this. Some of you put in an alert that said invalid input. You didn't have to do that, but I'll just put it in there, okay? But what I was more concerned with was that you said height equal, invalid input for height. Something along those lines. It doesn't matter what you said, as long as you said something that made sense. So when we get done, please look on the screen, even if you're keying this in. Right here, when we get to this line, right there in gray, that H is either going to hold a valid number, that's height, or it's going to hold the string invalid input for height. Does that make sense to everyone? We don't care right now. You could put a negative number in there. You could do that. It would be stupid, but you could do it. Because we have not talked about validation yet. We're going to get into that as we go on in here. All right. Now the good news is I can grab every bit of this, copy it to the clipboard, paste it in, change my H to a W, tell you to enter your weight, and I just set it up for 175 pounds on mine. Again, it doesn't matter. Make this a W, make that a W. Whoops. Invalid input for weight, and return W. So other than changing, the only difference between this routine and this routine is I changed the H to a W. And just so you know this, if I wanted to do this, the only one I really would have had to have changed was this one and this one. I could have left that H if I wanted to in there. It wouldn't have hurt anything. It would have been just fine. All right. Are there any questions on either of these first two routines? So what I should have now when I get back is either a valid height and a valid weight, or one or both being invalid, where it's been replaced with invalid input for height, invalid input for weight. Okay? Now, the next thing that was in there we called calculate BMI. And I didn't really care that much how you did this. All right? But up here we've got the formula, as I gave you that. And I'll just use this one. Now, I didn't expect you to do this, but we could have checked in there to make sure those were both valid numbers. We could have done, if is not a number, we could have not done that. Do you understand what I'm saying? If either the height would have been equal to invalid input for height, or the weight would have been invalid input for weight, we don't have to do this calculation. And if you still don't understand, look at it this way. If this is invalid or that's invalid, my answer is going to come back NaN. Does that make sense? But I didn't ask you to do that. You could have done that. I don't know if anyone did. I don't remember, but I don't think anyone did. But either way, it's okay. So the only thing that's left in here is to display the values. And again, one of the other things that was said in here, rather, display both inputs and the calculated output. Some of you, all you displayed was the BMI. Again, that's not what you were asked to do. You were asked to display everything. All right? Some of you did do that, exactly as you were asked to do. So we've got this function. I don't remember now what we called it, but that's okay. I'm going to put it back in there in just a second. Oh, that's it, display values. All right, and all you needed to do there was some kind of an alert where you said something like this. Height equals plus height plus, and I'd put a \n in here so it goes on another line. Weight equals plus W plus, and again, the new line, BMI equals, and this was the little bit that was different. BMI dot to fixed to 2 decimal places. All right, I believe we did that in the calculator. All right, and that's it. Now, when you look at this, I want to quickly show you another way to do this particular line, because sometimes this can get really unwieldy. Imagine that I was sitting there and I was putting in 10 pieces of information, you know, your first name, middle initial, last name, address, city, state, zip, etc., etc. That could get really long, and sometimes people don't like to do that. What I've got is fine, but I could have also done something like this. var, just call it like str, maybe output str for output string, equal, all right, and I'm going to just grab these pieces like this. And then I can come into here and I can say output str plus equals. I'm just going to, so I'm creating a string, and I'm just going to keep adding to it. And I guess that's wrong there, isn't it? That was height. They should have said weight. Sorry. So the advantage of doing it this way is now all I have to put in here is alert, and then just add OUT output str. See how much cleaner that is for the alert doing it that way? It really and truly doesn't matter which way you did it. All right? So let me grab I want to grab all of the JavaScript that's in here. And I want to copy that to a new file, and that one is going to be hot1a.js. All right, so there's that. Let's go back to the HTML. We don't need any of this now, so let's write the HTML. And again, I didn't care how nuts you did or didn't get with this. Well, the first thing I want to do here, and I might as well do it up here, is I'm going to say script source equals, and I'm going to put in that JS HOT1A.js file, so I'm able to use that. And again, I'm saying this, I'm not looking at anybody. I just want you to know, because a couple of you had problems with your external JS file. You cannot have script tags in this file. Everybody hear that? You cannot put script tags in a file that ends with .js. It'll never work. All right? So, there's that. Yes? There's all sorts of argument over where it should be. Okay. It depends on the book you read. You literally can go through 10 books and find 5 that'll say each one.
Okay.
And it's even worse with jQuery, because typically if you use jQuery, you do put that in the bottom, because that manipulates the document object model, and you might start manipulating it before it's actually been fully loaded. All right, something this simple, it's loaded like that, so it doesn't matter. But you're right, we could have taken that, and if you're more comfortable doing that, and a lot of developers do, then just put it right in here and put it right down at the bottom of the body. That's no, I would never take off for something like that. The only way I would is if it didn't work. You know, yes.
So it really doesn't matter on this type of stuff, but if you get more complex and something, you have it in the body.
You're typically going to see it in the body. Okay. Yeah. All right. All right. So again, this was pretty simple. You know, my interface, input, type equal button. I'm going to say this, ID equal calc. I'm not going to do anything with it now, but that's okay, calc button. And again, I'm showing you this because eventually we want to be able to use get element by ID with calc button. Does that make sense to you? All right. What I'm showing you right now, just so you know, is I'm not showing you how to write JavaScript code. I'm showing you how to program. There's a difference between those. JavaScript code is written differently. In fact, most languages. The good news for you, just so you know it, is next semester you're going to learn C#. And then the fall of, or the spring rather, of whatever the hell that is, 2018, okay? When you learn Java, syntactically it's almost identical to C#. I think that's a good thing. And many, you know, if I had somebody from Microsoft here, what I'm about to tell you, they'd hit me for saying this, seriously. But what C# is it's JavaScript's attempt to copy, C# is Microsoft's attempt to copy Java. It is. All right, they can say whatever the hell they want to say about it, but that's what it is. And the other good news is come fall of 2017, so a year from now, when you're in the ASP.NET class, we use C#. All right, so you're going to have a really good foundation on how to write this stuff. But what I'm showing you now, this stuff, if statements, functions, etc., you use that in any language you work with. All right, and that's why I've decided to show it to you this way. Evan does not do it the way that I'm doing it. All right, if he came in here, maybe he'd be upset with the way I'm doing it. I don't know. But I think, to me, this is an easier way for you to understand it. All right? And you might say, I don't know if you think it's a good thing or a bad thing that you're learning 3 languages. I will tell you, when I was at Blackhawk, one of the things that drove me nuts is in the first semester, they learned JavaScript. In the second semester, they learned Java, they learned C, and they learned PHP. So they have some semesters where they're doing 3 languages, and it gets really, really tough. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Okay? All right, so the other thing I want to put in here is value, so I've got something on the button. So value equal calculate. And the big one was on click equal main. All right, so that's that. So let's save it. I have no idea if it's going to work or not work. I really don't. Okay, so there's the button. And it looks, at least right now, as though it doesn't work. That's okay. We'll go back and take a look and see if we can figure out why. All right, we got a function main. Height equal get height. There's height. Did you notice this too? And one advantage of using something like, and this isn't the only editor, but a good thing about using something like C#, like Notepad++, I can double click on the word height, and it shows me every instance of it in the program. All right, and you might think, well, big deal. It's a big deal if you spell it wrong once, because you can start looking through it and see where it should be used, and etc. So if I accidentally spell that one wrong, if I put IE there instead of EI, I put IE, and then I double clicked here, you notice now it's not highlighted. All right. Yes.
I think I found that here.
Okay.
In the get height, the variable, you're missing a parenthesis on the end.
Oh, and I must be in the other one too then. Yeah, there's a paren missing there, and there is a paren missing there. Thank you. Again, another nice thing about Notepad++. If I highlight my first left paren, it shows me the one that matches with it. And thank you, Brady. Since this was missing, notice now when I click that one, nothing gets highlighted. That's a simple way to debug, but it is a way of debugging. All right. Plus, as you mentioned before, so if I come back in here and I look at this and I hit my F12 key, and some of you have already done this, all right, notice here, uncaught, missing parenthesis after argument list, and it tells me where it is. If I use the console, this is what chapter 4 is about. And I will tell you, you may not like this, but you have to learn debugging skills. The best way to learn debugging skills is learning to program, because you're naturally going to make mistakes. Help other people. But one of the next programs that you're going to get, I'm going to give you a full program, but it's going to be filled with errors. And you're going to have to debug it and make it work. All right? So if I click on this, it even brings me back and it shows me where it is. So as Brady mentioned, yeah, it's missing a paren there. And since I copied the first one to the second one, since I had a problem with the first one, of course I'd have a problem with the second one. All right, so let's save that. Go back to here again, run. That isn't bad. Well, let's try to test out the stuff right away. I'm going to leave that off. Invalid input. Okay, so that's appeared to work. Invalid input. Okay, and it didn't print anything. I don't know if that's because I had an error or if that's because I had those NaN values and I tried doing math on them. I'm not sure. So let's run it again and put in valid values. So we'll leave the 72 and the 175. It's still not printing anything. So something's wrong someplace in those routines. So we come back in here. It looked like the height was okay. It looked like the weight was okay. So I'm going to start with the calculate BMI. BMI equals weight. That looks like it's okay. All right. So var output string equal height plus, I'll tell you what, let's do this first. Maybe we'll see if the problem is in that output string I had you to write, so I'm going to use this one. All right. We'll come back here and run this again. Height, weight, still is a problem. So something in there it doesn't like. Display values, so that's good. Height equals. This variable that's right here, this one here, and this one here, those must be these. They must be those. Inside of here, these are local variables. I'm creating something brand new in here. And then when I get done, I'm taking that brand new thing that I created and I'm stuffing it into here, or I'm stuffing it into here, or I'm stuffing it into there. All right? Now, this shouldn't be a problem, but I'm not returning anything. That might be the problem. So I can say here, instead of BMI equals, I can say return weight, all that. Okay, let's see if that was the problem. Height, weight, and it appears that was it. Okay, and notice it's 2 decimal places. All right. So let's run it again, and I'm gonna leave some stuff off. It does tell me invalid input. It tells me invalid input, and notice what I've got. Invalid input for weight, look at that, something's screwed up here. Invalid input for weight, where it should have said height. Weight equals NaN. BMI plus NAN. So something's screwed up there, okay? So I go back and I take a look at the code. The answer, the good, bad, or indifferent, my mantra is the answer is always in the code, because it is. That shouldn't be a plus, that should be an equal sign. That's what screwed that up. Height equals plus height plus backwards, n plus weight equals plus n. So why isn't it like that? Height, weight. The way this should have been written is I should have said, if not is not a number, meaning it actually is a number, height and not is not a number, weight. All right. In English, what that means, again, I'm telling you this in English, is if both those values that we put in for height and weight were numeric. Okay, that's in English what that means. If they both were numeric, then do the alert. Then I could have even said in here if I wanted to, else. Now I can do an alert where I can say height equal and I can say weight equal because they're going to be garbage, correct? I'll take your question in a second. Does that make sense? All right. And I'm going to grab all this stuff. So this should say invalid value for height, invalid value for weight. And for BMI, I'm just going to put could not compute. Now, I'm just making this up as I go. And I'll take your question in just a second. But let's run the program again, put in all invalid values and see if it handles it. Well, so I screwed up something here. Yes.
Exclamation points.
Yes.
One's outside, one's inside.
Well, I mean, if you want to be real picky about it, it actually should be done like this and like this. That's the way it should be done. Because now this is one whole condition right here.
Why is one parenthesis in
Yeah,
two
why is it-
brackets and one's not?
Ah, okay, thank you. That's probably what the error is. Now I understand your question. All right. So let's save it and try it again. Oops. Good news is when we do the next one, it should go real fast because it's a simpler program, and hopefully we've gotten all the errors out of the way. Still isn't like something. In fact, let's do that. Let's run it again, and let's see if we can debug it that way. All right. So notice now, it's not showing any errors. Yes, it is. Missing paren after argument list in line 57. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So it's in this file in line 57. It doesn't like, so, oh, I didn't put an ending paren in there. See, the system is trying to help me, regardless of how stupid I am. It's trying to help me. All right, so let's save that and let's try it one more time. 72, 175, and it all prints. We run it again. We'll leave that blank. We get our message. We leave that blank. We get our message. And now, so it still doesn't like something for weight, so I'll have to look at that. But you can see it's coming into play, so to speak. All right, so I want to look at that weight thing because, like I said, somehow it looks funky in there. So let's see. The other thing, and again, I'm not trying to confuse you here. There's so many doggone ways that this can be written. Oh, see the problem? Look, I didn't change that to a W. It did everything it was supposed to do. Okay, W. Okay. Now, just so you know, notice what I have here, weight equals this. If it's invalid, and here I've got that for height. Everybody see that? Okay, that value is being stuffed into here anyway, into here or into here, correct? So really a cleaner way for me to have done that would be, rather than to say that, would have said to say right here, return this and return this. It would have done the same thing, but it's a better way to program. All right? So I'm going to save this one more time, and I'm going to do one more thing. Remember this? I don't think there was an error with this, so I'm going to check. If there was, then I won't use it. All right? Now, it's going to look funky because BMI is not set, and actually it was set up here to 0, so I have no idea what it's going to be, but that's fine. And I'll leave them both in here. So I have the alert. I'll have two different alerts. And I'm just going to say here again, alert, output, str. All right, so we're going to try that and see if it worked like that. So 72, 175. There's everything from the first alert. There's everything from the second alert. Okay, so I could have done it either way. But the problem comes in when I run this and I put in something like this. That's all correct now, not a number. It still tried to do the math because I didn't put an if is not a number in there. So it still tried. So it multiplied. It's like multiplying Jeff by Scott. You get is not a not a number because neither one of them. And when you do an arithmetic operation in JavaScript, just so you know, if you do an arithmetic operation in JavaScript, and one of them is non-numeric, you always get NaN, always. In almost every other programming language, the program would have blown up right there. In a strongly typed language, and you all know what strongly typed language means now, program would have blown up. All right. So notice they are still both being set correctly. So I could have done these either way, is what I'm telling you. So hopefully this made sense. Does anybody have any questions about this? All right, some of you, and I'm not being accusory here, but my guess is you almost went online and tried to find out something you could use, just because it really looks similar to things I've seen online. All right, but I gave you this on purpose because I didn't think this would tax any of you mentally. Maybe I was wrong. I don't know. All right, but this is and for the next interface, it's exactly like this, except I changed that A to a B. And I changed that HOT1 BMI to HOT1, kilometers to miles. All right, so I'm going to save this one in just a second. In fact, I'm going to save both of them. All right. And what's on here, so again, I could put in what is it? Declare and initialize global variables. Somebody tell me, why are these global variables? What? Because they're not defined in any function. All right? So this, again, you know this because we talked about it. Main totally is in here, a program driver. All right? And just so you know, I'm going to show you this. Don't worry about writing it down or anything. This is the next chapter that we're about to go into. But if I'd done something like this, bless you, I'm going to say var here again, equal true. I'm just don't even worry about what that means. But I'm going to say here while again. Oops. Do you all see what I just did here? I created a local variable, a Boolean called again. This right here is a shortcut. This means the same thing as while again equal true. Means the same thing. The difference is now by putting this in a loop, the program's going to run over and over and over and over and over again. That's the good news. Bad news is I haven't given it any way to quit. So you're going to learn that when we go through and we start doing programs and we do the array programs, we're going to put that in so we can run the program continuously. All right? So, any questions? And again, the get height and get weight were identical, except everywhere you used an H in the height, you changed it to a W in the weight. But they're identical as far as their logic goes. Does that make sense? BMI, I gave you the formula. We could have done it the other way too. I think that no one did this, but if I come out here and I go JavaScript power function, okay, so it's math.pow, which I thought it was, but to be honest with you, I wasn't sure. So we wanted to say here, height, would everybody agree with this? That height times height is the same thing as saying height squared. Does that make sense? All right, so we could have, and I'm going to comment this out, but we could have written this as this, and we could have said here, math.pow, height, comma, 2. That would have worked also. That's using the built-in JavaScript function. And you might say, well, that's fine. This is just as easy, and you don't. I agree with that. What if the formula had been h raised to the 8th power? Would you have really wanted to write height times 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 height? I wouldn't, when I could just change that one to an 8. All right. Okay. Any questions on this first one? Because I'm going to quickly go over the second one, then we'll take a break. So I'm going to grab this HTML file. I'm going to do a file, save as, and I'm going to save this as 1b.html. Come over here and change this to, let's just call it KM to M converter. That's the only change I have to make is in my title. I can use the same one. I shouldn't say that. And I have to now include B. Okay? Now, if I run this, since I haven't created it yet, nothing's going to happen. If it's easier for you, then create your JavaScript in here and then move it over. Same kind of way as when you're creating a website, use style tags and put your CSS right in the file, then move it over to external files. There's nothing wrong with doing that. All right? All right. So I want to come back to here because this is the second one. So I'm going to grab all of this stuff just like we just did. In fact, I'm just going to grab this. All right, now I'm going to come back to this one right here. I'm going to do a file, save as, and I'm going to call it 1b.js. All right, now I'm going to literally just get rid of everything that's inside of it. There, that's gone. All right, now I can come back to the 1a.js. And I can, whoops, that's not what I want, I'm sorry. That's fine, we'll fix that in just a second. In this one, I want to come back to here. Come on, where are you? Because it's not up there. There, that's what I want to open. So, this is correct the way that it is. Oh, I guess I've got it in there. So the only thing I have to change is this stuff right here because the description is different. So again, that's right here. Copy. Paste. So it was number 2. Again, you were given the formula. Don't know, I got that there, but that's fine. So everything else is the same. Does that all make sense to people? I don't have to go back over it. I'm just going to go and write JavaScript for this one. That's it. All right, I want to grab my formula that's right here, and I'm going to copy that to here. Okay? I'm just going to throw it in here for right now. All right, so declare and initialize global variables, var kilometers equals 0. Let's put 0.0, and var miles equals 0.0. And again, we can put comments in here if we want to. Inputted kilometers. And these are the calculated miles. All right? So, function main. It's again going to be a program driver. So I'm going to say here, what? I think kilometers is what we asked for. So kilometers equal get kilometers. Miles equal calculate miles. And display values. Now, okay, just because I want you to get a break in, I'm gonna cheat a little bit, and I'm gonna grab some stuff here. And when people say, well, that's cheating, no, that's being smart. You were given two problems to answer that were almost identical problems. So if you get the first one to work, why not copy the stuff into the second one? That's smart. That's not cheating, that's smart. There's a big difference between those. All right, and I think, honestly, I think every one of you is a smart person. So I see no reason that I shouldn't try to show you things in what I would consider to be a smart way of doing them. So I'm going to come back in here. I'll make my changes, of course. So instead of get weight, this is going to now become get kilometers. So K is going to be equal, enter kilometers, please. And I'm just going to default it to 100. If it's not a number, I'm going to say invalid input, so invalid input for kilometers. And I'm going to return K. So I'm already done with that one. All right, again, to me, that's a smart way to do this. Now I've got my calculate. Well, it's not calculate that, it's calculate miles. So I want to change that to calculate miles. And down here I put the, and like I showed you before, rather than returning, or rather than saying miles equal, I'm going to say return. Return kilometers. You don't need the parens here. I just am used to putting them in. So do that, return. So now those two are done. So the only thing that's left is display values. All right, we're just going to keep it simple. I'm not going to put all this if. I'll leave the if not a number in here. That's fine. So if it's not a number for kilometers, and if it's not a number for miles, all right, we'll do the alert that says kilometers equal with kilometers, and we'll say miles equals with miles. Again, like I said, this is an easier one. And let's take both of them and put them both .to fixed. You didn't have to do that, but let's just do it anyway because it's cleaner. All right, otherwise, we're going to say kilometers equal, so if it's, let's see, if it's not numeric, we're just going to say that. Oh, if it's not numeric, it's going to be the error messages. So this stuff is actually what we want down here. Maybe I had that already, I don't know. All right, but here we just want to put kilometers. This is going to be an error message. And this is going to be an error message. Or it could possibly be an error message. All right, so literally, how long did that take me to do that? It was less than 5 minutes. All right, could I have made an error? I've shown you already today. It's very possible that I did. So let's go back to here. Let's save this. Run it. That's a good start. All right, somehow my to fixed didn't work, but it should be 62.14. Because if I multiply 0.6214 by 100, I get 62.14. All right, so that actually worked. So let's look. And I think they weren't, this didn't get hit because they weren't both non-numeric. So I think I should leave the .to fixed in here. Even if it's garbage, it shouldn't hurt anything. And since I'm printing out the same thing, since now this is exactly the same as this, I don't need an if statement. Well, that makes that routine a lot simpler. And let's run it one more time, then it's break time. So 100, well, I need a line break, but you can see it worked. Okay? Let's run it one more time. We'll leave it invalid. And it's not printing anything. Okay? Not sure exactly why. We can go back and change that. That's not that big a thing. It really and truly isn't. What I'm more concerned with, it should be an N, that's why I didn't get the line break. But if we look, again, this was exactly the same as the other one, this. The only change was I changed the title and I changed the file I was including. That makes sense to everybody in here? The other one was this. All right, so I had two different local variables, kilometers and miles. I had my driver. I had my get kilometers. I had my calculate miles. And I had my alert. And I believe the reason that nothing printed is it tried to run that to fixed on something that was NaN. That's why it didn't work. So I would have to go back and put an if in there like I did before. It'd be a little bit more complex. But this works just fine. I mean, if somebody had turned in this, you would have gotten, if not every point, pretty close to every point. All right, so I'm going to turn these back in. It's 9 o'clock. Let's come back. We'll give you a nice, decent break at 9:15. And when we come back, we're going to go on to the next part, which I believe we said was to start going over the next chapter. All right. If you didn't do well, don't let this throw you. All right, that's one of the reasons I made it 50 points. All right. And again, I'm giving them back in the order I always give them back, which is just alphabetic order. Question? What? I'll put them back up there again. I don't mind doing that. And I will tell you the truth. I'm saying it's not because of you, but the reason that I do it like this instead of just sending them to you is that what happens is if I send them to people, then they end up copying my stuff and they try to use that for every test. That's not a good way to learn. But I'm hoping that going over this, it makes a lot more sense now. Now you can argue, and this would be a fair argument. You could say, yeah, why didn't we do this? And then why didn't you give us a test with two other problems? Maybe that's the way I should have done it. I don't know. All right. So again, looking at where we are, we have now done, go over the schedule, go over and return this. Okay? So after the break, I'm going to start on chapter 3. When we get done with that, we're going to do the test review. When we get done with that, we're going to do the next version of the calculator. Does all that make sense? What do you need? The second one?
I think spazzed out, so I'm like behind on both of them, so I can just do it later if she's
Okay.
gonna send me it.
Okay. Well, the other thing is, too, remember this is being taped, so it's all out there, too. All right? And I know, when some people go, yeah. And I look to see the views, and most people aren't watching the tapes. I would tell you that if you are struggling in the class, that's one of the reasons that I'm making them, so you can go back and look at them. And I realize people's time is precious. Many of you have family and work obligations, or both. I understand that. I do. All right? But, you're making a big commitment in yourself for 2 years. All right? And let's face it, when you're out there and you're looking for a job, the main thing that they have to go by is your transcript. All right? So if you go through this program and you get A's in all your gen eds and you get C's in all of these classes, you're probably not going to have as good a chance of getting hired as somebody who maybe gets C's in their gen eds and gets A's in these classes. All right? It just depends. All right, so again, come back by 9:15, please.